stand for the opening prayer and pledge.
Father in heaven, bless us as we gather today for this meeting. Guide our minds and hearts so that we will work for the good of our community. Teach us to be generous in our outlook, courageous in the face of difficulty, and wise in our decisions. Thy will be done. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hancock County Commission will come to order this third day of August 2017 at 2:30 p.m. Mr. Clerk, I'll ask you to take a roll call, please.
Mr. President, all three commissioners are present today.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on, approval of the County Commission meetings for minutes for July 20th, 2017.
Move to approve.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have with us today Danny Greathouse. He's the Executive Director of the top of West Virginia's Convention and Visitors Bureau. Welcome, Mr. Greathouse.
Well, thank you for having me. What I'm going to give you is our annual report and also expenditures for the year. The top of West Virginia CVB. And obviously our annual meeting will be September 21st, where everyone's invited to come to that. And I know that's not a lot of time to look through all those numbers and notes and to see where they're at. I can tell you that finances have went down. I'm projecting for this year coming up about a $291,000 income basis versus last year was about $320,000, $330,000 we had planned. Hotel motel tax has been down, basically due to the Weirton. The Marcellus Shale really knocked it out. I do believe it's starting to get back up. I mean, I just looked at the numbers the other day. And the other thing is kind of concerning to me is state grants are done away with now. There'll be no state grants for CVBs. The state is going to do co-op programs where they'll buy an ad and you can buy into the ad. The CVB grants were about a 50-50 rate. So if I bought $1,000 from Channel 9, they'd pay $500, we'd pay $500. I don't think they're going to do that. I'm not sure what they're going to do. But I would tell you this, the Governor's Conference on Tourism will be here the last week of October and the first couple of days of November. And at that, they're supposed to let everything out about what the co-ops will be and what they're going to do. So kind of set your schedules up, guys. I'll send you an invitation on that for the it's going to be Halloween, 29th, whatever it is, that is, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I believe. So everybody from the state will be here. Hopefully the governor will be here. We did have a meeting Tuesday in Charleston, and as you guys have read the paper, the governor is talking about calling a special session. Tourism may be on the agenda. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it'll be on there or not. In his budget, when he first opened the budget, he wanted to do a Pure Michigan campaign. If you ever watched the commercials, Pure Michigan, he wants to do that on West Virginia, and the legislature did not fund that. So he may call that on a special session. I don't know if he will or not. Of course, there's the vote coming up in October on the road bill, so we'll see how that goes. But that's all I had this morning. Of course, Paul, Mr. Calloway, Commissioner Calloway is a member of the board and attends every meeting. And actually calls me on things from time to time, so hey, he's pretty good. He's not like that other guy you had before him. What was his name? Swartzmiller, yeah. He's really aggressive, but so any questions at all?
No, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your support and help.
Thank you.
Have a good day. I'll accept the motion that we make the financial report that he gave us a matter of record.
Move to make that a matter of record.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Under new business, approval of a lease agreement with Hancock County Solid Waste Authority.
Move to approve.
Discussion? What this new lease agreement is, currently the Hancock County Commission has a lease agreement with our Hancock County Solid Waste Authority facility, which is located on Gas Valley Road. we needed to extend that lease to June 30th of 2040 for the recycling center to be approved and being able to apply for certain grants. So that's exactly why this is being extended to 2014, and a new lease has been prepared here. If there's no other discussion, the motion is to approve the lease. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval to hire Jen Walker as a full-time kennel worker for the animal shelter effective August 16th.
Move to approve.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval to advertise for part-time workers for the animal shelter.
Move to approve.
Discussion? The advertising for this will be put on Hancock County's website, the Weirton Daily Times, and the Hometown News. No further discussion. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Under the dog warden, approval of July 2017 monthly report.
Move to approve.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Under the Office of Technology and Communications, requesting approval of the Beaver Valley Power Station 2018-19 grant agreement with First Energy Nuclear Operating Company.
Move to approve.
Discussion? Mr. Vitus, you have any comments, or you want to briefly talk about the grant?
We're a little bit early on with the grant this year. First Energy wanted to move us up and get this done. If you're aware, they're trying to sell or lease the plant, so they wanted this finished early. So they've given us some money to help us do away with a rental obligation in addition to what they normally do, and this helps pay for both our director and our deputy director for the OEM office.
Very good. Motion on the floor is to approve the agreement. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Under finance, approval of probates and estates.
They have been reviewed and are recommended for approval.
Move to approve.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the exoneration orders.
Move to approve.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the general county bills.
General county bills were $39,269.98. P-card payments were $27,366. And July expenditures for all funds was $910,074.52.
Move to approve.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the animal shelter levy fund bills and requisitions.
They're okay to pay.
Move to approve.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of library levy fund bills and requisitions.
They're okay to pay.
Move to approve.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of shelter workshop levy fund bills and requisitions.
They're okay to pay as well.
Move to approve.
Discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Move on to citizens' remarks. Today we have with us Rudy Rosnick. Mr. Rosnick?
My name is Rudy Rosnick, ROS&ICK. Okay. A year ago, the commission took over the operation of the animal shelter, boasting that they could operate the shelter better than the nonprofit that operated the shelter for the previous 20 years. They said they could match or have a lower euthanasia rate than the 5% recorded by the previous shelter operator at a lower cost to the taxpayer. Here are the results of the commission's first year operating the shelter. These facts are based on county-provided documents. First, 122 animals died after entering the shelter in fiscal year 2017. This equals over 9% of all the animals entering the shelter. Of the 122 animals, only 31 received a medical assessment before being euthanized at a veterinarian's office. 66 of the remaining 91 animals were killed at the shelter by the shelter management, and the other 25 at the shelter died for various reasons. Compared to the previous year's shelter operation by a nonprofit, this is double the number of animals that died for a similar period of time. Second item. For fiscal year 2017, the taxpayers paid over $160,000 more than a nonprofit was willing to operate the shelter. When someone pays more for a service than what others charge for a similar service, they expect something extra for the additional cost. However, it appears Hancock County only received a doubling of the animal death rate at the shelter for the extra cost. And $160,000, I will admit, Mr. Davis, your correction to me a couple meetings ago about the $111,000 for wardens, that's been taken out of this figure. So
I'm sorry?
you mentioned 2 meetings ago when I did a presentation about my numbers. You said I wouldn't take it into the $111,000 for dog warden expenses. You were correct.
Oh, yes.
I'll give you credit. You were correct for that. So this $160,000 is the adjusted number. Okay. Besides the $160,000 in tax dollars spent at the shelter this year, the commission also lost over $300,000 in accumulated shelter excess levy money that could have been used for animal care and shelter improvements. Simply stated, the total cost for this commission's decision last year to take over the operation of the shelter was about $500,000. Looking forward, we need to ask, what have we learned over the past year? The commission increased the fiscal year 2018 shelter budget by over $220,000 to $424,000. After again adding, this doesn't include the levy money, the $100,000 there, and it doesn't back out to $111. So the $424, that's about right when those two balance each other out. This means the commission understands it cannot operate the shelter anywhere near what a nonprofit can. Here's a few reasons it costs the commission more than a nonprofit to operate the shelter. Again, this is based on county documents. First, the commission should understand having 2 full-time county employees with benefits at the shelter compared to 1 full-time nonprofit employee with no benefits increases shelter costs. The commission also understands paying $12,000 in overtime increase the shelter costs. The commission also understands having 15 part-time employees, and I just got the numbers last week, earning $2 an hour more than what the nonprofit staff of 14 had, again, increases shelter costs. And then finally, the commission should understand paying $2,200 to send the acting shelter director to a 3-day conference in Florida when you're $150,000 over budget is not again, it increased, operating costs such as shelter, and it's also not a very wise financial decision. Based on above facts, the commission should save the taxpayers $15,000 to $20,000 a month by returning shelter operation to a nonprofit. In closing, what is the commission working on that will save the taxpayers $15,000 to $20,000 a month? If you can't answer that simple question, then as a taxpayer, I ask you consider the taxpayers of Hancock County and begin discussing the return of the animal shelter operation to a nonprofit. I thank you for your time.
I would like to make one comment, Mr. Rosnick. You mentioned something about $2,200 being spent for one of our employees to go to a training facility
No.
or
No, it's
conference
a
or something like that.
conference,
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Tell me what you know about it.
I'm not falling for that, Jeff. I just see the bills. And
Yep.
the bills show $2,200 in expenses paid for someone to go on. My point is not if there was some value there or not. My point is if you're $150,000 over budget, then the first thing any proper financial manager is going to do is you're not sending employees to conferences. You're cutting overtime, et cetera, et cetera. That didn't happen here.
My question wasn't a trick question. I just wanted to see how much you knew about it. And
That's all
obviously,
the
you
agenda, that's
knew
all.
that the individual who went to the conference cost, you said, the county $2,200.
That's the bill.
Are you aware that most of those expenditures were reimbursed to the county?
I haven't seen it. I haven't
See,
seen
I
it.
only
I
know
haven't
about
billed
half of
yet.
what you talk about. That's my point.
Yeah.
That's not a trick question. I'm
Well,
just
I'd like to
making
see
an
the bills.
observation on how you go every week and come up and tell about what you know. The unfortunate thing is you don't know everything, Mr. Rosnick.
Well, we go on what we see. And
Yeah,
what is
you
in the
don't.
county
You look at the
document.
expenditures, but you don't go
Okay.
and follow up and see if any of it was reimbursed. See, that would be the very first
Well, what
question
you
that I
can do,
would ask.
Mr. Davis, I'm more than willing, send me the
As
documents.
you mentioned
showing
a
that
minute
they-
ago, Mr. Rosnick, that 2 weeks ago you reinvestigated and researched what I had mentioned in the
Yeah.
meeting. I was correct on what I said.
I think you were.
Again, I'm correct on what I'm saying today. And
You may be,
my
but I don't have the
recommendation to you,
documents.
Mr. Rosnick, if you're going to come here and challenge the commission or challenge myself, be prepared, because I'm going to be firing back the answers next week to you.
I would like to see that. I really would, because I've asked for it and I haven't seen it.
You didn't ask for any. Evidently, you looked at expenditures, but you didn't bother to inquire about if there were any receipts for reimbursement of
Well,
this
the
job.
documents given me do not have the reimbursements. You're right. So I'm dealing with whatever information I receive.
Try to
from
get the
county.
whole truth
Thank
before you inquire. Thank you,
We'll
Mr.
provide all the
Rosnick.
information that I will.
I have one question also. Do you know what the foundation had in total expenses for a year?
That's all the audit reports. That's all I ever saw.
So did you see a total?
About $370,000 a year.
How much?
About $370,000 is what it cost them to operate the shelter.
So how much less is that than what it cost us for last year?
That's not the point, Joe. I mean, if you look at it, that's $370,000. Where they get their money, you shouldn't care about. What the taxpayers had to pay them is the issue. They would have been paid $88,000 last year. You know, even though it cost them $370,000, the commissions never paid them $370,000. You went from $220,000 to about $150,000, then down to $88,000. I mean, you were not giving them that money when you say how much. You just proved my point. I said, now you understand what it costs. It costs you $400 and some thousand to run it. It cost them $370,000. The problem is 50 cents on the dollar they raised. You didn't pay for it.
$374,000 in 2014, because that, I believe that's the last audit we received.
I think it was.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we are running it at the same price, very close to the same amount of money.
Except they paid for half of it and you didn't.
We were getting 188 plus 100, which is 288,000 during that time
It was
period
188 total, Mr. Harvey. That was the offer.
in 2016.
Yeah, it was 88,000 from your general account.
2015, 2014 was 188 plus 100.
No, no.
188, then I think it went to 144. You're right. 188, 144, 88.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Farley? Moving on. For the good of the order, Ms. Lascola, do you have anything?
No, sir, nothing today.
Mr. Lucas?
Mr. Davis, I guess dovetailing with what you said about Mr. Rosnick getting the complete truth on some things. A couple of weeks ago, there was a letter to the editor in the Weirton Daily Times where Rudy Rosnick made some comments about the levy money that the Attorney General made an opinion on, in that there are 2 points in there that need to be corrected. And again, it would be good for Rudy Rosnick to make sure he has his facts correct before he starts drawing conclusions, and especially before he starts making any allegations. In that letter to the editor, Mr. Rosnick alluded to the actual amount being lost of approximately $365,000 when the opinion sought was only concerning $300,000. And again, I want to stress this is an opinion. It's not a ruling. It's not a court order. Something the Attorney General has issued an opinion on. It is up for the county to either follow or challenge or move forward with its own action. But in any event, Mr. Rosnick apparently went forward with a report on a balance sheet that referenced $365,000 being left in that levy account of prior levies. But what you have to understand is when you look at your bank statement, there are certain checks that haven't cleared yet, certain expenses that may not have been paid out yet. What the net amount was is exactly what was reported to the Attorney General, which is an amount of approximately $300,000. Yet Mr. Rosnick in that letter alluded to there seems to be another missing $65,000 that the Commission hasn't accounted for. When the Foundation's final bills were all paid and other expenses for the shelter, during that applied to that levy for that fiscal period, the remaining amount was approximately $300,000. Again, what was referenced to the Attorney General. Now, going further from that, there was a further allegation that there was somehow an improper email made by an unnamed commissioner to the Attorney General. And Mr. Rosnick made the allegation or alluded or seemed to imply that it's improper, and he applauded the Attorney General for not addressing this mysterious email to the Attorney General. Any semi-intelligent reading of the Attorney General's opinion would demonstrate that what the Attorney General was referring to was nothing from any type of communication sought by any of the commissioners of this commission, but what it referenced was an allegation, an unproven allegation or fact made by the Foundation that some, again, unnamed prior commissioner had allegedly made in an email a statement where he referenced or made an opinion regarding ownership of those levy funds, or at least use of them. The email was never produced, but out of an abundance of caution, my office, on behalf of the Commission, referenced that email just so the Attorney General would have all available facts. The Attorney General's opinion is abundantly clear that he need not even consider the possibility of an email from a single commissioner because the Foundation has no right to ownership or use of those levy funds, none. So whether or not a commissioner ever made an opinion in an email is simply irrelevant, does not need to be considered. How anyone could either draw the conclusion that a commissioner was somehow trying to improperly or mysteriously contact the Attorney General in regard to those funds personally escapes me. It's either just a reckless lie or you don't know what you're talking about after you've read the opinion. Again, it would be nice if Mr. Rosnick had simply maybe read the opinion better and then asked what was this opinion or this email all about. If he had read it, it should have been clear. If we're going to be negligent in the truth, then you're going to lose credibility. And Mr. Rosnick, as for all the allegations he's made against that commission, against this commission, should take some of his own medicine to make sure that what he's speaking about has credibility before this commission and before the people of Hancock County. And that's all I have. And but further say that Mr. Rosnick has no right to a rebuttal.
While we're talking about that particular editorial, if you recall, Mr. Lucas, you and I met with Attorney General Morrissey.
That's correct.
And we met with him on May 22nd. And if you recall, what was the question that we were asked after with Mr. Morrissey? That, if you recall.
Well, we asked of him, well, if it's his opinion that we need to refund these levy funds, how would we go about it? Seeking, again, his professional expertise, how would we refund this? And the answer was, well, first, there was no answer because, quite frankly, he didn't know. But we were advised that at that time, his office, he would speak to some attorneys in his office, and someone from that office would get back to us. To this date, and Mr. Davis, you can answer for yourself, but I know the prosecutor's office has never received any such phone call from the Attorney General's office or email or any other contact explaining how we might go about that. What would be the legal proper mechanism for that? To the best of my knowledge, unless you would know otherwise, the commissioners and the commission office has not received any such email, phone call, or letter to the same. To the best of my knowledge, the county has not been instructed by the Attorney General how those funds should be, or those funds should be refunded, or if they even realistically can be. You have to understand this would be an administrative nightmare through all the mechanisms that have to be put in place, and it could easily amount to more money in terms of cost than what currently exists in that fund. Hence why we asked the question, because we were trying to do our due diligence with the Attorney General to make sure if this is what we need to undertake, how do we do it? What can you tell us? He had no answer, and to this date, we have no answer.
And the commission's received no answer from the Attorney General either on how to distribute.
That's right.
And why and just so for anyone who's interested, why it is so complicated in determining how to refund these dollars, if in fact we have to. For example, and I'll just take the year 2010. There were $24,000 of the levy money not spent for that year. There are approximately 33,000 tax slips a year. So to go back to each taxpayer, divide their percentage, and figure how much each taxpayer for 2010 should get of that $24,000 is an absolute nightmare. It's impossible to calculate. The Attorney General has said that they don't have the answer for it. We have even spoke with the state auditor, and their office has come to the conclusion that they cannot give us a reasonable explanation or way to redistribute those funds. And each tax year, 9, 10, 11, and so on, each amount is different. And each taxpayer's bills are different each year. So to try to calculate what each resident should get back without creating possibly a class action suit against us, we're very hesitant to take any action on doing so. That's why we have asked the Attorney General and the State Tax Department to help us with this. To this date, they have not been able to. The funds are still in the county coffers. The taxpayers' monies are here. So when we're instructed and someone much more educated than I am can figure out how a way that we can redistribute these funds, we'll be happy to do so. So
We have that one number came from, because Mr. Lucas is looking at it. The $365,000 I referenced in that article you did, that was based upon a report that Mrs. Lascola produced, to this commission, and you approved in the July timeframe. It showed that the balance in that account at the end of the June period was $365,000.
Maybe at the end of the June period, that is correct, but there were expenditures that had not been submitted yet that were paid in July that would reduce that fiscal amount at the end, and it reduced it down to the sum of approximately $300,000.
And his clarification does not change my answer at all. My point
Right.
is exactly the same. If he had continued to do his research, he would have found there were outstanding expenses and bills that needed to be paid, that was not the final tally. He has just proven my point.
That's exactly why we are not able to determine our unencumbered balance here at June 30th meeting or the first meeting in July, because there's outstanding expenses like each and every one of us has in our household that follow over to the following month that we have to pay.
Correct.
So the balance is roughly the $300,000 that's in dispute here.
Yes.
I agree that
Very
there was
good.
$60-some thousand spent after July 1, but my question was, the Attorney General does have statements in there saying that as of the end of that contract, neither the commission nor the foundation had a legal right to spend any of that money. So if they're saying you don't have a legal right to spend that money, then again you get into that conundrum about bills that are coming in that truly were expenses from the previous year.
They were expenditures from the previous year,
I agree.
which was accrued by the Animal Foundation. We had an obligation when the Animal Foundation submitted those bills to us to see that those vendors got paid. That's just common sense.
And you pay for it out
They
of the
applied to the
general-
bill. They applied to the bill, and they applied to the contract and
Right.
the levy year.
That's right. There was,
I know, but one could make an argument you pay for that out of your general account because you no longer have the authority.
it was
based
paid
upon-
for out of the
It's paid out of
shelter.
levy funds.
It was paid out of levy funds. But again, no wrongdoing on the commission's part. Mr. Vitus, Mr. Lucas, you have anything else?
Nothing further, Mr.
Mr.
Davis.
Vitus?
Well, I'm going to have to join Mr. Lucas here and take exception to one number at least. 122 animals died, 9%. The difference in our numbers and the foundation numbers is our numbers include every animal that was hit by a car, brought in sick, taken by a dog warden, and those animals are in addition to what would have normally been put down in the shelter. If you would take those animals, because I did those reports that you got, if you would look at those reports, you would see that there's at least a dozen off the top of my head as I sat here that I know were run over or hit or had half their head on when they were brought in. These animals were in bad shape, and yes, we did euthanize them, and yes, they are part of our 9%. But our 9% includes everything that the county had to pick up, which was never seen by the foundation. If it were, their number would have never been 5%. I have thousands of records of euthanizations by the foundation over 20 years. If you'd like to see them, you can sit and count them up, and they won't add to 5%. On a lighter note, Sunday at the Sylvian Picnic Ground, the Sacred Heart of Mary Church is having its annual picnic, and for those of you that knew Tom Zielinski, my predecessor, he will provide the entertainment from 1 o'clock until 4 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr. Vice. Jackie, anything from the health department?
Just, it's immunization season for back to school, and we've been pretty busy so far, but try not to wait till the last minute for your kids to get immunized.
Very good. Mr. Longi? Jeannie from the election office?
Just other than the pamphlets that I handed out to you guys, if anybody has any questions, please contact us.
Very good. Jeremy, emergency services?
Nothing today.
JC, how about 911?
Okay.
Mr. Foley?
Jeannie explained about the pamphlets that we received from the Secretary of State's office, and behind it there's a lot of 2 page, front page, back page, give you a lot of explanation why they're doing it and some answers as to what they want out of it. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Cowie?
Yes, I'd like to congratulate both Sergeant Robert Connor. He was promoted to lieutenant on Monday, and also Deputy First Class Scott Little, and he is also promoted to sergeant this past Monday for the Hancock County Sheriff's Department. So I'd like to send out congratulations to them.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Barnaby?
I have no comments.
Okay. One of the things I wanted to mention is that the Hancock County Animal Shelter is going to have an open house on August 26th. That's from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. There'll be different events going on that day. We'll have a little cookout, that sort of thing. The public's invited. Please stop out. Again, it's August 26th, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. The other thing that I'd like to mention is back on September 12, 2016, Mr. Rosnick, he submitted a complaint against the 3 standing commissioners at that time, Schwartzmiller, Barnaby, and myself, and also Mr. Vitus. And I have a release here that I would like to read, and also I can supply the press with a copy of the complaint and also the answer and the findings of the complaint. In September 16, 2016, Mr. Rudy Rosnick filed a complaint against Commissioners Mike Schwartzmiller, Jeff Davis, Joe Barnaby, and Executive Director Bob Vitus with the West Virginia Ethics Commission. The complaint alleged a violation of the Ethics Act in hiring of county animal shelter employees prior to advertising for the positions. Mr. Rosnick alleged that 4 individuals violated West Virginia Code 6B-2-5B that states that a public official or public employee may not willingly or intentionally use his or her office or the prestige of his or her own private gain, or that any other person by hiring friends. Mr. Rosnick supplied information obtained from FOIA requests as the basis for his action. During the next 30 days, each individual, the 4 that I had mentioned, we served answers to the complaint and we denied the charges. On July 19, 2017, the West Virginia Ethics Commission Probable Cause Review Board, after a thorough investigation into the allegations and review of all relevant evidence and law, dismissed this action, stating that probable cause does not exist to believe the respondent that is, the commission, materially violated any probation of the Ethics Act. Each of the individuals received notice from the General Counsel on July 25, 2017, that the case had been dismissed. I know that this was in the press. An attempt was made to give the commission and Mr. Vitus a black eye. None of us appreciated it. I think that's just another shot at us. I don't play that kind of game. We are, Mr. Schwartzmiller, who was here, Barnaby, Mr. Vitus, and myself, straight shooters. We have nothing to hide. Everything is available for the public. This was just an attempt to blacken our eye and maybe tell another half-truth. So I don't know if you got a copy of that release, Mr. Rosnick, but I'll be happy to supply you two to show that the case was dismissed.
I had a 45-minute conversation with the ethics attorney, and it's not the way that you're entirely.
Well, anyhow, here's a copy for the press. And with nothing else of value to hear today, I'll accept the motion that we adjourn until August 17th at 2:30. We are adjourned.